everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen and I'm here with my May reading wrap up. And starting off, I finally finished Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Finally. I've been reading this one for over a year, all 3 books, and I'm finally done with it and happy to be done with it. It was a slog. Had to kind of force myself through it a bit, but I do love the movies. And I wanted to see the differences between the books and the movies. And yeah, not a ton to say about the last one that I haven't already said about the first 2. The ending felt... there was some silly stuff at the end there, particularly with Saruman and the group's kind of goodbye to him, which just doesn't appear in the movies at all. And yeah, was surprised that Frodo goes back to the Shire for quite a while. But yeah, overall just mostly glad to be done with this one. Other than finishing that book this month, although I've been reading it for many months, I read 5 other books this month, which is just a ton for me. Starting with an unexpected reread of Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I reread this one because the movie was coming out, which I knew, so that element was not unexpected. But I just wasn't necessarily planning to reread it, but just before the movie came out, I decided I did want to reread it after all, because I had only read it the one time when it very first came out. And I'm glad that I did reread it. I feel like I enjoyed it more on the second read. I remember being fairly disappointed by this one the first time I read it. I think the first time I just couldn't get over the strange plot that just wasn't doing very much plotting. So this time going into it, I knew that there wasn't much plot. I knew that the plot that was there was a little bit strange, so I was prepared. And I think that allowed me to connect with Aza better, because I was just ignoring that part and just in it for Aza, the main character, which I think is what you're supposed to be experiencing with this book, is just being in it with the main character. This book is about a main character who has OCD, and really that is what the book is about, is exploring what it's like to have OCD. It is not there for the plot. And though I myself do not have OCD, I do have social anxiety, I'm introverted, I'm shy, and there's a lot there to connect with Aza. The book very much takes place in her head because she is very much in her head all the time and not really interacting with the outside world fully because she is so stuck in her head. And there's this great line where she's at dinner with some friends and she notes that her friends are laughing because something funny happened and she's laughing because they're laughing, because she's not really hearing what they're saying. So yeah, the idea that anxiety can put you a step behind everyone else, I felt. I did find her best friend Daisy incredibly annoying on this reread. I don't remember if I disliked her that much on the first read, but on this reread I just could not stand Daisy, which I think might be a controversial opinion. Like, I get that sometimes Aza can be in her own head and not worrying about Daisy's life, but to me it felt like that went both ways, because Daisy has absolutely no concern for the fact that she's essentially using Aza to use someone that Aza used to be friends with years ago, and not even thinking about how awkward that could be for Aza herself. And then once she's done using Aza, and through her, this former friend of hers, she stops caring about that person entirely and gets upset when Aza continues to be concerned about that person. It's just incredibly selfish. So in my mind, Daisy was just as, if not more, selfish than Aza. And so I had a lot of problems with Aza being presented as the one who is annoying / selfish. But I do think part of the point of that is to show that Aza herself feels like her OCD makes her annoying to other people. And I think she feels this way even when she isn't annoying other people. But in the case of Daisy, Daisy does get annoyed by her a lot, and to me a lot of the time in ways that just aren't fair. So yes, still not my favorite John Green book, still probably my least favorite John Green book, just because the lack of plot, and for me, kind of how strange the plot that is there is. I understand why it's kind of a missing person mystery detective subplot. I understand the point that he's trying to make, but it just wasn't pulled off well enough to not feel awkward and clunky for me. But glad to have done the reread. The movie was fun. I enjoyed the movie. And at the end of the day, it's still a John Green book and I love it. After that, I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I've been slowly working my way through V.E. Schwab's backlist, reading one book or series of hers per year. This kind of started with my husband buying all of her books just based on the fact that he really liked the covers. And V.E. Schwab has been a little bit hit or miss for me. I've read The Near Witch, which I really did not enjoy at all. I've read the Shades of Magic series, which I liked, but I felt like I should have liked it more, if that makes sense. Like, I felt like it had more potential than it lived up to. And I've also read Vicious and Vengeful, which I loved. Those were 5-star reads for me. So this year it was Addie's turn, and I also loved this one. This one was 5 stars. I did have previous experience with a fictional character who had the same situation as Addie has, which is that no one remembers her. And that was the Zero series by Scott Westerfeld, a series about a bunch of teenagers with like superheroes, but with not typical superhero powers, and most of them are kind of a curse, and this is one of the more obvious ones. And the character with that superpower of being forgotten is by far my favorite character in that series, so I was excited to read another book with this concept for the main character. I enjoyed the multiple timelines, although I did not enjoy the past timeline for the love interest. I just wasn't super interested in him. I was much more interested in the main character. And I also didn't care very much about his kind of secret ability. Don't want to give too much away. And there were kind of 2 love interests in the book, and I was way more interested in the other love interest, the non-human love interest. I felt like their relationship was really intriguing. But then I absolutely loved the ending. I loved how the ending was more focused on that other relationship and kind of gave a glimpse into how that relationship might progress in the future. And yeah, overall just really enjoyed it. At times it did feel a little bit repetitive. Our main character had a lot of run-ins with this non-human love interest, and those started to feel repetitive. I feel like there were just too many of those. But other than that, I just really enjoyed it because the main character was endlessly interesting to me. And then finally, I read 3 out of 4 of the Skyward books by Brandon Sanderson. 3 out of 4 because the final one is still hardcover, so I'm waiting for it to go paperback. And when it does, I'll reread all 3 and read that one. So starting with Skyward, which was already a reread. So I won't talk about it too much because I have talked about it in a wrap-up before, although quite a long time ago. But this is a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved this book the first time I read it. Loved it the second time. It's extremely action-packed. It is a sci-fi space series in which humans have traveled to a different planet a long time ago and kind of crash landed on it, and now they're stuck on it, and they are constantly under siege of alien species. And our main character, all she wants in life is to be a fighter pilot, but her dad is known as being a coward. Her dad who passed away when she was a child. And so no one wants her to be a pilot because they're all worried about her being a coward as well. So she's a character with a lot to prove and a big attitude, and I really love her. But I also just love all the side characters, including this fighter plane that has an AI, Mbot. He's hilarious and lovely. And her entire team and just all the characters are awesome. So then after that I read Starsight, so getting into spoilers for moving into later books in the series. And this one I also loved. I didn't like it quite as much as the first book, but it was still 5 stars for me. In this one, humans have gotten off of this planet that they crash landed on, and are starting to get back out into space a little bit, and our main character ends up needing to be a spy and goes off to this other planet and is separated from everyone from the first book, which a lot of people I've heard online do not like the rest of the series as much as the first book, and I suspect that could be why, because we are separated from a lot of the characters from the first book. But I liked how this went because in the first book she's being trained as a fighter pilot, and in this book she ends up being a trainer in her kind of spy duties. And so it was nice to see that growth of like going from being the student to the teacher. Very natural growth. And then yeah, these books just have such interesting themes that get you thinking. A lot of the puzzle pieces start coming together in this second one. The second one did have Stranger Things vibes for me. Some of the outer space creatures and stuff were really giving me Stranger Things. But yes, overall was really happy with where this one went. I was worried from seeing the commentary online, but I was perfectly happy with where the series went, even though we did lose a lot of our old characters in the sense that our main character was separated from them, but we still had Mbot, and that's what matters. So then finally in May, I read Cytonic, the third book. And for this one, our main character is on her own, kind of adventuring, exploring. She doesn't have her original team. She doesn't have the team that she trained in the second book. She's, like I said, much more on her own in this third book, which again just feels like a very natural progression for the main character, and again is making her grow as a character in a way that's really nice. Now, that being said, I do hope and assume that in the final book we will get our old characters from the first book back. I'm assuming it's gonna come full circle, which is part of why I'm okay with the main character continuing to be separated from previous characters, because I trust that it's all going to come together. Because again, in this book, things, more pieces of the story were coming together in ways that I really enjoyed. Once again, I did not like this one as much as the second book, which I didn't like as much as the first book, but I also still gave it 5 stars. This one is just kind of the first one where I did feel at times that there wasn't quite enough happening. It was kind of a lot of wandering in space, sort of. So for a long time on this one, I thought I was only going to give it 4 stars, but then a bunch of twists came at the end and it was all very exciting, and I was like, okay, 5 stars after all. So those were all of the books that I read in May. It was a big and good reading month for me, very exciting because April was not a great reading month, so good that May made up for it for me. Let me know down below what you read in May. I hope you enjoyed watching. Remember, words matter.